Today, I'm going to add one amazing superstar from every state in America. The goal is to construct a roster to compete for a Super Bowl in just one season, but we have to fill out the entire roster by using one player from every NFL team. This means we cannot add more than one player from the same NFL team to our roster, which will make this a lot more difficult. Starting with the state of Arizona. There are a few active NFL players born in Arizona like Mark Andrews of the Ravens, Christian Kirk of the Jaguars, and Brock Purdy of the 49ers. And there's no way I'm going to pass up on an elite superstar like Mark Andrews, and he will be our tight end number one. Now that we added our first player to the roster, we can no longer add another player from the Ravens, and the state of Arizona, it can no longer be picked. Since some states don't have any active NFL players, I can add up to 5 former NFL players to our roster. Opening another box, and it's going to be Massachusetts. And according to this article, the best active NFL player born here is Christian Wilkins of the Miami Dolphins, Chris Lidstrom of the Falcons, or Pat Freiermuth of the Steelers. But since we already have a tight end, I decided to bring in Chris Lidstrom of the Falcons to be our starting right guard. And just like that, we have knocked out 2 NFL teams so far with the state of Arizona and Massachusetts. If we are unable to fill a certain position on our team, we will be left with a 70 or below rated player to fill that spot, which will ultimately hurt our chances of winning a Super Bowl. Deciding which box I want to open, let's go with the number 32. And it looks like it's going to be the state of Maine. There's only 2 active players from Maine, and that's going to be Nate Davis of the Bears and Derek Rivers of the Texans. The obvious answer here is Nate Davis, and he will slide in on our offensive line. Bring our next box, and it's going to be South Carolina, and there are plenty of really good options here. DeAndre Hopkins, Stephon Gilmore, DeMarcus Lawrence, just to name a few, but I decided to bring in Deebo Samuel of the 49ers, and he'll be our starting wide receiver. And it keeps on getting better. The next box that we opened was Louisiana. After thinking if I wanted to add Dak Prescott as our starting quarterback, I decided against it, and I decided to bring in Justin Jefferson, who is part of the 99 Club in Madden 24. He will be wide receiver number 1, moving Deebo Samuel to wide receiver number 2. Picking box number 14, and it's going to be Kansas. For some reason, the only player I can think of from Kansas is Barry Sanders, who's no longer in the NFL, and I'm not really sure if I want to use my former player just yet. But after Googling it, we have a few options in Jordan Phillips, Malik Collins, AJ Epinesa, but they're pretty low overall, so I decided to go with right tackle Braden Smith of the Colts, fitting right next to Chris Lidstrom. The next box ends up being the state of Utah, and the highest rated available player is Dalton Schultz of the Texans, but since we already have Mark Andrews, I decided to use a former NFL player in Merlin Olsen, who plays his entire career with the Rams, and he'll be our starting defensive tackle. And quickly opening the next box, and it wasn't much better with Idaho. The only player that we can add is Leighton Vander Esch of the Dallas Cowboys, who will slot in at middle linebacker. With 8 teams already knocked off, our offense is filled with talent, while we only have 2 pieces on defense. The next state is Rhode Island, and the only available player is Kenny Yeboah, and the problem is, he's only a 63 rated. He is going to be our tight end number 2 behind Mark Andrews, but let's just hope he doesn't hurt our chances at winning a Super Bowl. Picking 2 numbers this time, and the first one is going to be South Dakota, and the second is Oregon. We will be bringing in Riley Reef of the Patriots, and then at quarterback number 1, we are going with Justin Herbert. The next state that we have to pick a player from is Hawaii, and I would have loved to bring in DeForest Buckner, but since we already picked Braden Smith of the Colts, we can no longer add him, so we're going to go with Jamin Davis of the Commanders, and he'll be our right outside linebacker on the team. Today's video is sponsored by SeatGeek. With over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. There are more than 70,000 events every single day on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports, festivals, and more. My Cowboys are coming to Buffalo to play the Bills, and I'm definitely using SeatGeek to get my ticket. With baseball season in full swing and football season around the corner, you don't want to miss out. Plus, artists like Drake and 21 Savage are on tour right now. They put all the tickets across the web in one place to make sure you are getting a good deal. But when you're on the app, make sure you're looking for the green dots. Green means good, and red means bad. Every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee, and SeatGeek is the only site that lets you return your tickets ahead of the event with swap. And you know I came through for you guys. Use code UPANDAM to get $20 off your tickets at SeatGeek. That's $20 off your first purchase when using promo code UPANDAM. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app. After finally getting a bit more help on the defense, the next day is Pennsylvania. So many great options here like Aaron Donald and Micah Parsons, but unfortunately I already used the Rams and the Cowboys, so I decided to help our secondary by bringing in Kevin Byard of the Titans. And moving this right along, the next 2 states are Virginia and Georgia. Plenty of great options from both states, so I decided to bring in Justin Simmons of the Broncos and Nick Chubb of the Browns. After finally adding a superstar at the running back position, the next state is California. And the first player that comes to mind is Devontae Adams of the Raiders, and he's going to be another weapon for Justin Herbert to throw to. With 16 NFL teams accounted for, the team is starting to come along nicely. The offense should have no issues being the best in the NFL, but the defense can still use some elite superstars. Going with box number 41 is going to be New York. And why not stay with the Giants? Let's bring in Saquon Barkley, and he'll be running back number 2 right behind Nick Chubb. And we followed that up with the state of Maryland. And although there's plenty of talent like Chase Young, Kendall Fuller, Trayvon Diggs, and Darren Waller, we cannot use any of them since our team's already been knocked off. But Stephon Diggs of the Bills is available, and he'll slot in at wide receiver number 3. Speeding this up just a little, the next 3 states are Kentucky, Oklahoma, and Nevada. Bringing in NFL Hall of Famer Demonio Dawson of the Pittsburgh Steelers at our starting center, Chris Harris Jr., who is currently a free agent but played last season for the Saints, and Will Hernandez of the Cardinals. With just 11 teams left, our defense might end up being filled with 70 or below rated players, which is definitely going to hurt our chances at a Super Bowl. And the next state is New Mexico. Having to use another former NFL player, we're going with Arian Foster of the Texans. He was a dominant force during his time in Houston, and he'll be our 3rd string running back. The next 2 states that we have to pick players from is going to be Florida and Iowa. Bringing in Brian Burns from the Panthers, and then going with Tristan Wirfs of the Bucks. We could have went with Joe Burrow from Iowa, but we already have Justin Herbert as our starting quarterback, so it would be a waste. Going with box number 34 and it's non-US. This means we have to pick an international player, not from the United States. And I'm bringing in George Karlaftis of the Kansas City Chiefs, and he'll be on our defensive line. Moving along, the next 3 states are going to be Michigan, Montana, and Tennessee. No brainer here, bringing in Aiden Hutchinson of the Lions, Will Disley from the Seahawks, and Cedric Wilson Jr. from the Miami Dolphins. With just 4 teams remaining, we still have plenty of holes on our defense. The next 2 states that we have to use are Missouri and North Dakota. From Missouri, we're going with Foyesade Oluokun from the Jags, and from North Dakota, Cordell Volson from the Bengals. That really doesn't help much with the team needs. The last 2 teams are Connecticut and Nebraska. Bill Romanowski played for the Eagles, and he's from Connecticut, and then we'll bring in Amon Green as our fullback from the Packers. And just like that, our offense is looking amazing with Herbert leading the way, but on defense, we're stuck with no elite cornerback. Let's just hope that doesn't hurt our chances at a Super Bowl. The defense starts the opening game off strong with a huge sack by Merlin Olsen, and the offense made it look so easy with Herbert throwing an absolute dime to Mark Andrews for a touchdown, and they kept it rolling with multiple touchdowns to Justin Jefferson, a beautiful catch by Stephon Diggs, and Nick Chubb was able to get on the board with a rushing touchdown. The team was easily able to defeat the Panthers 45-7, and Justin Herbert threw for 368 yards with 4 touchdowns. They carried that momentum from week 1, winning their next 6 games, and are now tied with a division lead with the Saints. Justin Herbert leads the NFL with 2,000 passing yards and 19 touchdowns, while Justin Jefferson leads all receivers with 719 yards and 10 touchdowns. Merlin Olsen already has 12 sacks through 7 games this season. But can they remain undefeated? Unfortunately, we do not remain undefeated, losing to the Cardinals in week 10 and then the Saints in week 18. We did still manage to finish with the best record in the NFL and secure a first-round bye heading into the playoffs. Justin Herbert finished first in the NFL with 4,690 passing yards and an incredible 53 touchdowns, which helped the team finish first in offense. Nick Chubb finished with an impressive 27 rushing touchdowns, while Justin Jefferson and Devontae Adams showed up big. Even with the lack of corners on the team, the defense still finished first, and that was a big thanks to Merlin Olsen and Aiden Hutchinson. They now take on the 9-8 Eagles, who had the 6th best offense this season. And the game didn't start great for us, being down 7 already in the first quarter, where Herbert was able to find Justin Jefferson in the end zone to tie the game. Herbert was able to tie the game once again, but Jalen Hurts gets his team in field goal range, and they are now have a 3-point lead heading into halftime. The Herbert-Jefferson connection is coming through big as we score once again and take the lead. We just need one stop to move into the NFC Championship game, and on 4th and goal, the defense gets a huge stop, and we went on to win the game and are moving on to the NFC Championship. Next up is the Saints, and this game wasn't much of a fight, as our offense scored often and the defense was able to stand tall, easily defeating our divisional rivals 49-16, and Herbert had a great game, 330 yards and 2 touchdowns. Herbert ends up winning the NFL MVP, and we now take on Josh Allen and the 12-5 Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl. Justin Herbert and the high-powered offense came out strong, moving down the field with ease, and Nick Chubb was able to punch it in to take the early lead. And after the big defensive stop, Herbert goes right to Devontae Adams, who fights for the touchdown to take a 2-touchdown lead. With a 14-3 lead, Amon Green finds his way into the end zone for a yet another touchdown. 21-3 after the first half, and they carried that momentum in the second half, dominating the trenches, giving Josh Allen no time to make the comeback. The team of US states end up defeating the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl after finishing with a record of 15-2. If you enjoyed this video, YouTube thinks you'll like this one, and I think you will too. Go check that one out.